It's Learn Ubuntu Live, presented by LearnUbuntu.org, with your host, Tom Judge.
This presentation is in support of our chapter on creating HTML tables, a rudimentary but necessary skill to know how to make web pages. In this chapter, we're going to learn how to make tables, about the different types of table cells, and the various table attributes that are still native to the HTML language. In reality, you will probably use CSS to do a lot of this. However, we need to teach this legacy stuff as part of the core HTML series. So let's see this presentation now on creating tables and learn some of these basic necessary core HTML skills. So about those tables. A lot of people now use divs instead of tables. A lot of people use a combination of divs and tables. Tables are part of the core HTML, so we cover them here. And here we see our table tag. And it's an opening and closing table tag right here. And each table consists of rows and cells, and here we show you the table row set tag. And this in the blue is the code of what you see up here. So here is one table. Here's a table with a row composed of 4 cells. And our next, as we progress to this chapter, we'll be doing exercises in building our table. In this chapter, we're adding a row of header cells. And if you note here, you see the text in the cell is bolded and centered in the header cell compared to the cell below, which is a regular table data cell. And again, here is the code, and we show you all this in details in our lab exercises and readings. And you also have the handy copy and paste little windows, which you can use if necessary. So, HTML table attributes include a background color, BG color, a border color, col span, which can make a cell span across several rows of columns, a row span, which can make a column span across several rows, cell padding, so we can add space around the edges of the cell between the cell edge and the content, alignment, and vertical alignment. So the alignment is left to right, horizontal, and the V-align is vertical alignment. Here we start to see some HTML table attribute examples. Here's a 3x3 with a blue table border. Notice the table border is blue, but the cell border isn't blue because we didn't specify the cell borders in this. We only specify the table border, so it's only the exterior border. Here's another gross example of a table attribute gone awry, all red. I'm not knocking the color red, but in this particular case, red with black text is difficult to read. And here's an example where we show you a 3x3 border and a col span of 3 in the first row. And we have all lab exercises in this chapter that will walk you through all of these. So, moving on. More examples, more labs, more doing by learning. Here's an example that shows us the row span attribute, and this cell now spans 3 rows. See? Even though it's a row span, it belongs with the table cell data. The table cell tag here has the row span attribute, not the row. Here's an example where we show padding. Notice how much more space there is around each text in each cell now compared with earlier examples. And here's our cell padding attribute in action. We introduced the color chart, which we will experiment with more in the next chapter on web graphics and color. But here we're using it just to see some of the standard colors. By the way, I'm going to remind you again about using quotes. You use the plain, straight, open and closing quotes, not the fancy. These are the ones you see in a word processor. They will not work with HTML. These are the ones that work with HTML. Many times if you're copy and pasting code somewhere, you may not get the right quotes as well. depending on what you're using to copy and paste to and from. On to our first lab exercise here. We begin making a table. This looks like we have 3 rows in this table. And the rows have no borders, so here's what you get. It looks like it's all organized, okay? In the next lab exercise, we're adding a header row to our table. The pasta, meat, and fish is our header row. Lab exercise 3, we're going to start to experiment with some table attributes, such as setting a background color for the table, adding a border, and we're going to play around with the row span attribute in this lab exercise. And here's what we get when we're done with this lab exercise. Your work should look like this. Each lab exercise has a link in it that you can click to see the page live on the Learn Ubuntu server. Yours should look like that if you did it correctly. Lab exercise 4, we experiment with adding padding to our cell. And this is the result there. You can see there's a little more space around each cell. Lab exercise 5, we introduced the col span attribute. As you can see, our code's getting a little bigger as we progressively add to the file and rename it through each exercise. This is spanning columns. This one is spanning rows. And we have a video clip. It's available in our on-demand video library, as well as, I believe, as part of one of these lab exercises. By deliberately messing up the HTML table code, what can go wrong? So this will help you if you're getting stuck with this. Inevitably, you will make a boo-boo and see what the results are. It's all part of the learning process. So, what we will learn at the conclusion of this chapter, provided we've done all the readings, lab assignments, and lab submissions and homework assignments, we will have created our first table, added a header row to the table, set the background color for the table, added a column that spans 4 rows with the row span attribute, and added a cell padding and using the col span attribute to span columns of the table. And then finally, in the end, just to show you that everything still works together, we have you add a link inside one of those table cells. So we hope you enjoyed this presentation. Continue to study, finish this chapter, move on to the next one. There's more fun ahead, I promise. And come again to watch more videos here at LearnUbuntu.org. Portions of this program were pre-recorded.